started, introduce John, and then we'll let you go ahead and introduce the panel, and we'll let you guys go from there. I'm Christine Borpommer. I'm an independent coordinator for T.B. Scott Library in the adult department for Wordsworth Hearing. And this is part of the Merrill Building Together series. It's been underway, golly, when did, here we'll look back at this February 19th we got started, and I think there was one or two before that when we finally coined the phrase and realized it was a group of citizens that was going together, and it's part of the strategic plan of the library. This is a place for safe and civil discussions, and we've come at strategic plans and with the municipalities and some of the other topics. And then this came up, right, as we discussed how the school and we are all integrated together. We are all part of improvement of the Merrill area. And so John Greenwood is with WIPS. It's the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service. And Jean has taken notes for us. We often say that we use those internal. We are discussing maybe publishing them, we like your superintendent's corner in the photo news, and we've wondered if people might not, that could make the meeting. I've had people afterwards, like our Built or Blight program for the city. Did we record it? Well, now we're fortunate that Merrill Production, and you can find these, search YouTube under Merrill Area Public Schools, and we are part of the Building Merrill Together series. So if someone says, what did they do there? Now you can send them to YouTube, courtesy of Merrill Productions. So John Greenwood is the moderator. I'll let you introduce panel and take it from here.
Thank you very much. Chris, do you think we need this microphone?
I'm not sure. I can certainly turn it on. If somebody, if we think we do, we'll go with it. Otherwise, I know most people prefer not to use it, but.
Well, let me talk loudly and see if we need a microphone. If we do, just let me know, and then we'll pass it around. But I'm very pleased to be here as a representative of the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, which is on the UW Marathon campus. And I'm also proud to be here because I used to work for the Merrill Area Public Schools, and I know what a great district it is. And it's pretty neat to have the whole cabinet here tonight to talk about not only what they do in their important jobs, but also some important outreach to the community. So what I would like to do is to introduce each of the panelists and then talk just a little bit about our procedure as far as this panel discussion is concerned. So I'd like to start with Dr. John Sample, who has been superintendent now for maybe a year and a half or 2 years.
A little over a year.
Yes. A little over a year, okay. And has a background, I know, in special education. And what I like about Dr. Sample's approach is that he likes to reach out to the community. And he's an extrovert, and he likes to talk with people, and that's so very important, especially as we go forward in our Merrill community, not only with the welfare of the schools, but the welfare of the community and the county. So thank you, John, for being here. And I'd like to start here with Kasia, and I'll just go down the line here. And I've met Kasia just recently, but she is the director of the technology in the district, district communication, website and social media, Discovery Education and Digital Leadership Corps. So we're pleased to have you here. And Dale Bergman is the director of Buildings and Grounds. So facility maintenance and responsibility of capital equipment, playgrounds, asphalt and concrete surfaces, including the life expectancy of roofs, windows, doors, floor systems, and wooden structures. Thank you, Dale, for being here. And Gerald Beyer. Gerald, I know you for a number of years, actually. And in addition to being the former middle school principal, he is now the director of curriculum and instruction, which includes staff evaluation, administrator evaluations, curriculum development and implementation, instructional pedagogy, professional development for teachers and staff, new teacher mentor program, student achievement data, district scorecards, district report cards, and Title I grants. So a lot of responsibility that Gerald has with the district. Thank you for being here. And we have, of course, Brian Dasher, the Director of Finance, and very important job, not only the impact of the state budget on Merrill, which is one of his areas of focus, but also the upcoming referendum proposal that's going to be occurring. So an extremely important position and a pivotal time for our district as we move into the next school year. Thank you.
Thank you,
Brian, for being here. And we have Karen Baker, who is the Director of Special Education, and has a special place in my heart because I work for the Special Ed Department, and I could tell, I met Karen, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something, and I could tell that she had control of the whole Special Ed Department right away. Just the way that she talks about her job and so forth. She is responsible not only for all the special ed services, but also transportation nursing, school psychologists, if they can be controlled, and school counselors, and ensuring that MAPS is a trauma-sensitive school district, providing services to meet students' social, emotional, and academic needs. And then we have Cindy Hines.
Hines.
I'm sorry.
Yep. No, that's okay.
Cindy Hines, the Director of Human Resources, and she's responsible for recruitment, employment policies and procedures, benefits, workers' comp, employee handbooks, substitute teachers and aides, contracts for salaried employees, job descriptions, and employee recognition and volunteers. So thank you very much, Cindy.
Thank you, John.
So what I'd like to just explain briefly, what we'd like to do is have each of our panelist guests talk about their areas of expertise and how they contribute to the district. And that might go 5 or 7 minutes or so. Let's say 7 minutes, something like that. We have about an hour, actually 2 hours, to discuss tonight if we go that far with it. So I'll kind of monitor it like about 7, maybe 10 minutes if you wish. And talking about their various responsibilities. Then what I'd like you to do, though, is we gave everybody an index card. And if questions come up for any of our panelists or any other questions that you have, please write them down. We'll take a short break after all of the panelists have made their comments. And then I'll gather the index cards and kind of cluster them together according to some themes that may emerge from that. And then I will ask questions, and it may be directed at, say, special education or whatever area it is. And then we'll have the panelists respond to those questions. But also, if you have other questions during that time, during the Q&A time, you can also ask questions there. So we want to make it somewhat of a controlled format tonight to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak on the panel and you get a chance to ask as many questions as you want to. And the only guideline I have is that if you disagree with what somebody says, just listen harder and see if maybe we can come to some sort of agreement on it. So, that being said, are there any questions, or does anybody have any other comments or guidelines? Okay. So I would like to start then with Dr. Sample and tell us about the school district.
Certainly. I am John Sample, and I've been in the school district now for 9 years. I was the Director of Special Ed and Pupil Services for 8 of those years, and then most recently, of course, as Superintendent. One of the first things that I did, in fact, I wasn't even hired yet when the board asked the question, what's the first thing that you're going to do as superintendent? And I said, you know, considering where we've been and where I see us going, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that we have the right people in place. And so that was bringing Gerald Beyer to the Director of Curriculum Department, and then having Ryan Martinovich fill his spot And then, of course, we had some positions to fill. That was the AP at the middle school with Mark Seaman, and then also Karen Baker. And that was the team that I felt that I could be the most successful with. One of the early events that that I stepped into, actually, and I'm glad that I did, it was already scheduled, was the community conversation event. And I know I speak a lot about that, but that was a very, very useful event for us, because that was 3 evenings and 3 long nights, really, of having almost 100 community members, of which about 14 or 15% of those, 14 or 15 were staff members from Merrill. But they're also community members as well. And sometimes we wear hats as employees and as community members, as parents. And so that was important for us to actually have somebody by the name of Drew Howick. He took us through and facilitated those 3 evenings, and it was very well laid out. We wanted to get input from the community. What do you see your district becoming? What do you think we need to work on? What do we need to stop working on? And what direction do you want us to go? And so out of those 3 nights, there were 21 priorities that came out, and they were ranked according to popularity, really, by the members that were there. And so that gave me the direction in which to go. I didn't have to guess. I had a pretty good idea, but you're never sure until you hear from the community. And so every time that I'm out in the community, I'm further validated by those 3 nights. As if that wasn't enough, we have another evening coming up mid-September, and that's going to be a follow-up to those 3 nights. And that gives the community, even if you could not attend the first 3 evenings, that gives you're still invited to attend, and that gives the community a voice to say, here's how well you did. We're going to rate you on this first year. That's the trust factor, and that's the trust that we need to develop, because as you know, this district has been through some transitions. We've seen sometimes a rotating or revolving door on here as far as turnover goes. And so that's one of the goals that I wanted to establish first, and that's what the community conversation helped me to do. We do believe very strongly in community partnership. The community can't exist without the school district, and vice versa. We cannot exist without the community members. It's the community that entrusts their children to attend our schools, and that we keep them safe and we prepare them for anything that they may want to do post-secondarily, whether that be college, the workforce, the military, what have you. And so oftentimes I sign every time in the superintendent's corner, proud superintendent, and that's a fact. I'm not here to build a resume. I chose Merrill. I'm originally from Glendale, Arizona, so I'm probably the furthest traveled resident, I think. That somebody can live outside of Glendale. And one of the reasons that we chose that is because our community in Arizona, as much as we loved our jobs, I was teaching and coaching, that was not the community that we felt comfortable raising a child, and so we sought out places. Of course, unless you're born in Arizona, everybody else in Arizona is from Wisconsin, and so I had a lot of people from Wisconsin, and I heard a lot about this great state. And we came up here, and really, we rented a car for 2 weeks. We had no other plans except to drive around. We had the map. We didn't have cell phones then at that time. And we put a green dot on every place that we really could see ourselves living. We ruled out big city, first of all, right away, even though Milwaukee and Madison are fantastic places to visit for me. And but that's not where we wanted to settle down. And I think, and I hopefully don't offend anybody here, but Janesville and Beloit, they were kind of medium. They weren't quite red. And we saw ourselves gravitating towards central Wisconsin, north central Wisconsin. And so I like to say that I wasn't born here by chance, that I sought this community out. And I still feel just as proudly as if I was born here. So we're in a great direction. Financially, the budget hasn't been settled yet. I can't speak too much except to say that the board has chosen to go to referendum. We're going to have to go to referendum. There's no doubt about it. But the timing is okay, because Kate Goodrich is going to drop off the taxpayers' rolls, and so we're going to send out a survey. We're going to ask the community. We're not going to say, hey, here's something we're going to shove down your throat. Please vote yes. We're going to say, here's a menu. What do you want to see your school? I think we need to continually ask, especially when it's taxpayers' dollars. You guys are the stakeholders, and I'm a stakeholder as well. And so that's where we're heading. I wish the governor's budget had been settled. Right now we're kind of on uneven ground, and we always are as a rural school district. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed, I'm hoping for the best, and if that budget comes out very soon, we're gonna know which direction we need to go with the referendum. So we need to plan for if it passes partially, if it passes just to break even each year and to balance our budget, or if it doesn't pass. And so we've got a lot of planning going on. This has probably been the busiest summer that I can remember in recent history since I've been here, of just planning all of those things, because we want to stay ahead of the curve. So that's just a little bit about me. Shall we go with the ladies next?
Sure. I'll go next then. Thanks for having us, John. I'm Cindy Hines. I'm the Director of Human Resources here for the Merrill School District. I've been in the district for about 2.5 years, and I'm very excited and very proud to be part of this district. There's a lot of really great things going on in this district, and for what's kind of a smaller district, I think we're really cutting edge. Lots of really neat things happening in the district. This time of year in HR, which a lot of people ask, well, you work for a school district, you don't work during the summer, do you? And yeah, we do. We work a lot during the summer. This time of year, we are getting ready for our teachers to come back, our existing staff to come back, and we're staffing up for the teachers that have retired or resigned throughout the course of the summer. So that's a big job for us, and one of the things that came out of the community conversation that John spoke about was appreciation and retention of our staff. So that's another piece of the puzzle that my department works on, trying to get people, making sure we have competitive salaries and benefits to bring in people to Merrill and make them want to stay here in our community and in our school district. And then also, as we go through the year, making sure that we're recognizing and appreciating all the great things that all the people in our district do. Teachers, support staff, custodians, there's just so many people that work together to make it happen. And I have a really great support staff that helps me in my department. I have one full-time HR assistant, Jennifer Barrett, and a half-time assistant, Rita Brzezinski. And they do a lot of the day-to-day pieces for me, which is awesome. We have open enrollment every year for insurance benefits. We work with a insurance broker to make sure that we're getting the best benefits for our employees at the best cost that we can. We have an insurance advisory committee which is made up of representatives of all the different groups of employees in the district, where we talk about what do we want to see in our benefits going down the road and how can we contain costs so that the costs don't get too high for our employees so they can continue to have quality health care insurance. There's a lot of things we do. We issue contracts to our teachers. All teachers have a teaching contract that's per state statutes, and there's certain guidelines we have to follow. Certain times a year we have to issue those contracts by and have those ready to go. We worked last year on a compensation plan for all of our hourly staff, and so that's our secretaries and aides, our computer techs, and our custodial staff. After Act 10, which was back in 2010, 11, most collective bargaining agreements and compensation plans and teacher salary schedules kind of fell by the wayside in most districts, and here in Merrill they did too, so we didn't really have a good plan in place when I came on board. And so we worked hard over the course of the last school year to put in a plan for the hourly staff. And next year, we're moving forward, we're going to be working with the teaching staff to see what we want a compensation plan for them to look like. We have something in place right now that helps with our existing staff. Most teachers are used to having like a schedule where you have like lanes and steps where you're going to get advancement salary-wise according to your education and your years of experience. So whether or not that's what we end up with, I don't know, but we're going to invite teachers to participate in that process to make sure that we put together something that's a fit for our district and for something that will attract new teachers coming in. There is a shortage of teachers in a number of areas. Right now we're struggling we have a tech ed position at the high school, and we've had very few applicants for that position, so that's one of our hard to fill spots. Another area that we're really seeking candidates for is substitute teachers and substitute aides. So if anybody out there is interested, let me know. To be a substitute teacher, you can actually substitute teach with a bachelor's degree. And there are some classes that CESA 9 provides to help you with classroom management and things like that. And for substitute aide, it's basically a high school degree. So we're in need of people to fill in those spots, because when a teacher or an aide leaves the room for the day or a week or whatever it might be, we have to have someone fill in for them. They can't just walk away and not, you know, us not have everybody there. I guess that's about it. I mean, there's lots of little day-to-day pieces that we do, but they're kind of boring. So I'll pass it on to Karen.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, my name is Karen Baker. I'm Director of Pupil Services and Special Education at the Merrill Area Public Schools. And a little bit about my background. I'm the elder at the table. I just want that up.
No, you're not.
Okay, of our team. Of our team, thank you, John, of our team. I was doing some math in year 37 for me. And I say that really just as a reminder to myself how long I've been in it, but how I have so much more to go. I started out as a business teacher and gravitated towards special education and spent my special ed teaching school to work program and then into the program for students with emotional behavioral disorders. And I have to say that's my most favorite piece that I've ever done. I spent 7 years doing that. I've been a director mainly in the north central northern parts of the state. And so I've had the privilege to see programs run from a joint union to K-12s to alternative schools to schools for adjudicated youth. So I've had a wealth of background and experience. When I came to Merrill, I was very excited. This is the completion of my first year and starting on my second year, and to be able to work with a team of co-workers who are as passionate about education. So it makes coming to work every day a great experience. Excuse me. So a little bit about what I do. I kind of goes from the far left to the far right. Two main categories: special education. Within the district, we serve students with various disabilities, anything from specific learning disability to other health impairments, visually impaired, hearing impaired, students with emotional behavioral issues, etc. We provide services in each of our school buildings throughout the district. We also have what are called related services, and that has to do with occupational therapy, speech and language, physical therapy, etc. And so it's really a program where we are making education and opportunities accessible to all students, so that all students have a level playing field. So that is an area that's very exciting. It is an area that has become very competitive within the state to fill teaching positions. We are fortunate that we are fully staffed, and fully staffed with a great group of people, but a lot of districts aren't so fortunate as we are. Also, within the student services hat, school psychologists, we have 3 school psychologists within the district. And our psychologists work from early childhood and birth to 3 program through high school. And they provide a mirage of services from testing, evaluations, reevaluation, social and emotional support for our students. We also have our nursing services in the district. We contract with Lincoln County Health Services, and we have 3 full-time nurses throughout the district, and they provide us guidance. You think, well, what does nursing need to be? It's amazing when you look at the policies and the procedures and all of the services that nursing is responsible for within the district. But we, again, are very fortunate to be partnered with Lincoln County. And so we have nurses who are up to date on changing laws, changing practices, and changing procedures, which we're very fortunate for that. We have school counselors in all of our buildings. And with our school counselors, they follow the Wisconsin Guidance School model, and really moving away from what you might think of the traditional, or maybe even what you did. You were called into the counselor's office once a year. What are you going to do when you grow up? Type of thing. And our counselors at the elementary and middle school provide in-classroom teachings, lessons, etc. to our students. They also work with students to make sure that every student is college and career ready upon graduation. This is a new mandate that's come down from the state, and it, excuse me, it really starts from the minute that your student enters school, but the focus is in middle school, continuing on into high school. So really looking at each student and what are the opportunities that you have, what are the things that you're interested, and making sure that when you leave, you didn't just meet with that school counselor once a year, that you actually, you have a plan that you're building all along. Another area that we focus on is trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive school. Last year, we participated in some of our in-services where we had presenters on ACEs training, and that is to inform and educate about trauma that students may have and that adults have. And it's really looking at your lifetime experiences as an adult or a child and how that shapes your experiences and your beliefs. And that was an eye-opener for us when you look at how do you rate things that have happened in your family, have happened to yourself. Because all students come to school with baggage. And the main takeaway from that also is that we have, as adults, have baggage. And so when this was presented to us as a staff, it gave us the opportunity to look inside ourselves and think about things that have happened in our lives and how we may react to a situation based upon our own experiences. But that is something that has really enabled us as a staff to be reflective. But it also enables us, when we look at a student, we don't look at the student's behaviors, but we ask the question, what has happened to this student that this is a behavior we're seeing? So that is called ACEs, and that's something that might be of interest to you. If you just put ACES in the computer, it'll come up. Another activity we did with the staff is we viewed Paper Tigers, which is a movie that is out there. You can get it off Netflix or you can rent it. And it talks about a school where students had several ACEs and how they taught the students. And the takeaway from that is, and it's just like Dr. Sample says on a continual basis, relationships matter. And by watching these adults interact with these students and seeing how taking that personal interest in a student, hearing about what they're doing, looking at what their ACEs might be, the impact that you can have on a child. And then a closing activity we did last year, we invited area service providers into the building. And then we also had a session on having a calming environment within your classroom and what you can do. We had social services talking with our staff about what happens if there is a mandated reporting. How do they see it on their side? Because as mandated reporters, we must report any incident that we see that we think that there may be a suspected abuse, but what happens to it? And it gave our staff a real good understanding of the process on that side. So we did that. And then another session that we had, and it was with the help of Kesha and her group, we did applications on iPads that both staff and students can use. And a lot of them had to do with relaxation, refocusing. What are things that a student or staff member could do for a couple minutes just to take a time out, take a brain break, and come back. And then the staff went through the different service provider tables, being able to ask counseling agencies, the extension office, et cetera, services that they can provide for the students, for their classrooms, but also for the teachers. And in the closing then, I would also share with our trauma-informed focus, we piloted having what is called school-based mental health services in the buildings, and this is at the middle school and high school, where we have partnered with some area service providers to provide mental health and counseling sessions to youth. This is all run through the agencies, and we are a site base for it. So a student would not have to leave school to make a counseling appointment. Transportation wouldn't be an issue, that type of thing. So that is something that we will have fully implemented when school starts. And the other thing that we have just started a pilot in the middle school, and now will be district-wide, and some of you that are at the library are familiar, is we have a therapy dog who will be coming to the schools. If any of you have met Kiva, I know Kiva comes to the library on a regular basis, as well as Bell Tower and some other places. But again, just having some different outlets for both students and staff. Kiva is a great dog to sit and read to. The students report when they read to Kiva, Kiva doesn't judge their reading. Kiva's gone through several levels of training, is able to sense anxiety or anxiousness in a student, and is able to react to that student. So we're really excited to be able to bring the therapy dog into the buildings from early childhood on up. So it's just kind of a snippet. So I'll pass on to Kesha.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Kesha Mushik. I'm the Director of Technology Integration. I was hired in the district just a little over 2 years ago, so I'm going on my 3rd year. And I started my career as a high school math teacher. And I grew up in a family of educators and couldn't wait for the day when I had everything organized, my lesson plans ready to go. And shortly after I started my teaching career, I found that repetitiveness of the day-to-day really was kind of taking its toll on me. I liked the challenge of learning new things, and fortunately worked with a group of teachers that was just beginning to implement technology into their curriculum. And that's kind of where my passion for technology sparked. And from there I transitioned to the West Dallas West Milwaukee School District and worked with their instructional and technology departments. Transitioned to the Wausau School District, coming back to my home roots of Central Wisconsin, and then was fortunate enough to take a position in Merrill. Like I said, just a little bit over 2 years ago. And when I was hired in Merrill, I was hired as the Director of Technology Integration, which was formerly the Director of Technology. And one might kind of ask, what is the difference between the two? But there is really quite a difference. Director of Technology, you could potentially perceive that as someone that's really in charge of the technical components of the district. With it being the Director of Technology Integration, I'm in charge of not only the technical side, but the instructional technology integration side as well, and the professional development that goes along with incorporating technology effectively in the classroom. So on the technical side, I have a team of 6 technicians that I give all the credit in the world to for keeping everything running and everyone happy. For the most part, we're in charge of the phones, printers, copiers, one-to-one technology, so MacBooks, iPads, any of the computer labs. I partner with Dale on a lot of the security and information system equipment. And then on the instructional side, I have 4 library technology specialists who assist more of the in-classroom type needs. So that means focusing on working with the teachers, teaching them whether they need to know more about the technical component of integrating technology or the information side of things, digital citizenship, kind of the gamut of that. They support the teachers, their teachers themselves who kind of have a passion for each of those topics, and then support the teachers to integrate that effectively in their classrooms. I also partner with many of the departments up here. For example, technology is not the answer for every student, and it's not necessarily, it definitely is not something that replaces the teacher, it's just a tool to enhance learning. So with that being said, there's a lot of things that can be leveraged on different technical devices to enhance instruction for students. So whether we have special ed needs, we currently actually have a robot roaming around the middle school actually that allows one of our homebound students to participate in classes as if they didn't miss a beat. I also work with many students with disabilities that can leverage the iPad, whether they are visual impaired or they need things, need things read to them. We leverage the iPads for that need, and then everywhere in between. So we help the regular ed students to the gifted students as well, challenge their skill sets. And ever since I started, we've had something to do. Since the day I started, when I got hired, I was told the iPads are in the maintenance building ready to go. And we were full steam ahead from there. It's pretty intimidating, but I was extremely excited about the opportunity to be in Merrill because when I interviewed, they kind of explained some of the things that I would, be responsible for. And a lot of the things I was responsible for was things that other districts were striving for and did not have that opportunity to do yet. For example, the one-to-one iPads, the instructional support, the team approach that came with implementing all of these new things, Merrill was already on board with, and I was super excited to be a part of that. And I thought, if Merrill can do it, why can't anyone else do it? But I was ready to go full steam ahead. So whether it's been the one-to-one iPad deployment and MacBook deployment, we've deployed all new equipment to all of our K-12 teachers and K-12 students, including pods of iPads for our actual 4K students at Pine River. Everyone has an opportunity to leverage technology in the district. And we also implemented new phone systems, new printers and copiers. A lot of what we had there wasn't necessarily a sustainable long-range plan when I started. So there's been a lot of new. But with that comes the responsibility of fulfilling a long-range plan to sustain all of this equipment. So we've been keeping up with that. And then most recently, this summer's project was the implementation of all of our really kind of more innovative communication methods. So whether it be the new website or all of our social media platforms, again, our YouTube channel, which I need to thank Nathan in front here for doing. We've been really trying to find other avenues to communicate with all community members, whether it's the young crowd or the older generation. We want to make sure that we are communicating everything that takes place in Merrill with all of our stakeholders. So I just want to thank everyone on this panel and then in addition to my team for the support. And during the one-to-one iPad deployment, I had the opportunity to see all of the families in Merrill come with their student to get their iPad. And so I've actually literally seen every single family come through Merrill schools and got a chance to meet them. And the support, everyone has their opinions on whether or not technology is the best opportunity for their student. But for the most part, it was overwhelming to see the support from the community and the parents. So I also want to thank them as well.
Thank you very much. So why don't we go down?
Great.
Here, John.
My name is Dale Bergman. I'm the Director of Building and Grounds for the school district. And I've probably come to the district in maybe the most obscure way. I was not a lifelong educator like the rest of the panelists up here. I came through the construction avenue where I taught apprentices through the sheet metal apprentice program for quite a while, but my view came to the school district more as a facilitator of construction projects or leading teams with the different maintenance projects and custodial staff that we have throughout the district, which we have about 25 full-time staff members, and then in the summertime we employ around 20 summer workers as well for various times during the summer. So we average about 41 in the summer, so it's quite a crew that we have put together to shine the floors and clean the desks and pick the gum off the bottom of the tables and all the other stuff that people don't see behind the scenes. We're fortunate to have a strong community here that I really think we're blessed with, and we don't even realize it. The support that I've seen in this community for the school district is really overwhelming, and I feel like just a great part of a family up here. We had tremendous support when we renovated Jay Stadium. We have tremendous support at sporting events. We have tremendous support at the iPad deployments, all the things that the community does together. You look at the gazebo night, look at all the historical trends that the Merrill people have done and continue to do that has been going on year after year. It's just wonderful to be a part of that. The community support is probably one of the things that I cherish the most in my job, because while I'm attending a basketball game or a football game or just a different event throughout the community, my ears are on what folks like you are talking about the schools, because more people in the community drive past our buildings and come in them every day. So I take great pride in empowering my staff to, spit shine everything and make it look good, because we're really proud of what we stand for in the community. And I think that's really what gives us the support of the community, is everyone can see the great pride that our staff takes in all those. I'm really grateful to be part of this team of professionals up here. And I think it's like we're all different stair treads up a ladder to success. We really, the things that I may not be as strong in, Gerald would support, and things that he's not strong in, Cindy would support, and so on and so on. We don't get top-down direction. We meet as a group once a week, and we make decisions together. And it's really a collaborative method that we use to make decisions that we feel are in the best interest of the community, based upon things like the community conversation that Dr. Sample talked about, input from community members like yourselves that lead us in the direction to manage the school district. So it's really very wonderful and heartwarming to get that support from everybody. Those stair treads are really, they're solid, and they're here for a long time. You know, we really make a commitment to our duties and our jobs throughout the district. We look forward to a lot of things throughout the day-to-day operations in the school district that people don't always see going on, but these minds are thinking all day and all night long. We communicate every day, seems like all day, all night sometimes, just because we hear something. We want to always make sure that our customers or our students, our community members are satisfied, and we want to give them all the avenues that we can throughout the district. Now, coming from an educator, that might be, you know, status quo, that's what you expect to hear, but coming from someone with a construction background, it really attests to the fact that I've been welcomed into this panel, into this cabinet, and into this community as someone with a different set of eyes for a different viewpoint that can really bring probably a little perspective into the mix of the conversation that maybe someone else may not have. So I feel very grateful to be here tonight and very humbled as well.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you very much. Gerald.
Good evening. I'm Gerald Byer, and this is my 29th year in education. I've had 8 as a teacher in a town called Winneconne, and I have completed 20 years as an administrator. The last 11 years as an administrator here in Merrill. 10 as the middle school principal, and last year I completed my first year as director of instruction. This is my home. I have 4 children. 3 have graduated from Merrill High School, and my youngest will be a senior this year. So that was kind of a melancholy moment there for me, wasn't it? I have, this handy dandy sheet in front of me with our job responsibilities, because this is our entire cabinet right here. This is your administrative team in Merrill minus the building principals, essentially. And on this sheet that I can hardly read, it says things that we have to do, and then we have this whole other list of things that we really need to do in order to improve as a school district. Part of my responsibility, I'm director of curriculum and instruction, so what does that mean? It's determining what needs to be taught, when is it taught, make sure they're certified when they're teaching it, and make sure we agree on how we're going to teach it with the instructional component. And as a building principal, there are times where you try to bring staff together, even in 3 grades, and if they're teaching the same subject, you ask a question, could you create a common assessment if you're both 8th grade math teachers? And it takes time for people to think and work together like that. Or take a staff and say, we need to agree on how we're going to grade a student and determine what an A, B, or C is. And if you ask questions like that, it can be very time consuming to work with adults to think through problems such as that. Then you throw in technology. We're asking staff members to change the pedagogy or the method in which they're teaching. So I'm thrilled by it, to try to align staff members and get them to think together and work together and plan together and improve together. That's kind of what my role is. I have the responsibility, as you know, for the state, we have an effective educator system, evaluation system that we have to utilize. We chose one, it's called the CESA 6 model by a researcher named Strong. So for the 200 plus teaching staff members in the building, I have oversight over that program to ensure that all staff members are evaluated and that does include administrators as well, where I have that responsibility with the leaders in the district and making sure that we are in sync with what we're working on and how we're progressing together. The Title II grants, we get federal grant money for professional development. It's called Title II federal money. I have the responsibility for that funding and determine how it's going to be utilized in order to advance the teaching and learning in the district. And also we have, this year, we're pretty excited about having instructional coaches this year. You know, we love acronyms in education. There's another one, AGR, Achievement Gap Reduction. And that's another program where we have some smaller class sizes. We use instructional coaches to help, again, help students learning. And it doesn't, and I keep focusing on the learning part of it because it's one thing if you taught it, and it's another thing if the child can learn it. And it's another thing, if they learn it, they have to be able to demonstrate their understanding as well. Some of the things that we need to do as well, you know, we're trying to be more of a system, not a system of schools, but a school system. And we have 3 elementary schools plus a charter at Maple Grove, but we're focusing on getting more consistency. So regardless of what elementary school a child is at, the curriculum, the core standards that they're getting and how they're teaching it are congruent, similar certainly, but we hope congruent. So we've added a lot of time for elementary staff to work together by grade level this year. We're trying to be educational tailors. I've never had a suit tailored or anything like that, but in education we're trying to have it fit the child. See, when we all went to school, everyone would get the same test, the same time, we're taught the same way, and it was either you have it or you don't. We have to meet the kids where they're at now and adjust our teaching, and I think we're trying to be a little more scientific about it. We're trying to get more statistics on the students and more data about the learning to see what's working and not working, and we're analyzing it more, just like when you go get your physical from the doctor. You know, we should have that same kind of data. It's more complicated because it's hard to measure the human brain, but yet we continue to do that. So we're personalizing our world. We're doing more one-to-one technology. We're implementing an entire reading format or program with Reading Workshop K-8 effective this year. We also have academic and career planning, as Karen had mentioned, where we want to know with every outgoing student, we want to know what your plan is. And we also are trying to get input from the community. We just had a window open until July 31st for a business survey. We're trying to connect more with the community. Not every student is college bound, and that's okay. They need to be work ready, life ready, career ready. So we're trying to get input and ask employers through the chamber, what skills do kids need? What coursework do we need? We just raised graduation requirements at Merrill High School for incoming freshmen by 2 credits. So this year we'll be rolling out, with the help from the community and the business survey, we'll determine where we're gonna, what courses we're gonna put in or add to Merrill High School. So we're looking forward to that. Just a little bit about this team too. Dr. Sample pointed out the other day, we met at the school forest with the entire administrative group, and he found a picture from 2010-11 school year with the cabinet and the principals, and there were only four administrators that are currently administrators in Merrill that were in that picture. 3 of them are here tonight, Mr. Murray, Dr. Sample, and myself, and John Hagenmeister. That was it. And this panel right here, I have to tell you, like I said, I've been an administrator in 3 different districts, and this is the longest stint I've had, and this is the last stint I want here in Merrill, because like I said, it's my home. We have a lot of experience here, but we don't have a lot of experience in our current role, in our current position. John, Karen, and myself just finished year 1 in our current roles. We have a lot of experience though. Kesha and Dale just finished 2 years. Cindy, 3 in your current position, I think?
2.5.
2.5,
Yeah.
and Brian maybe 5? 5.5. So we just finished 1 year together, and I'm just excited to be able to work with colleagues who want to think together, we can have fun together, we can plan together, we can think together, and help move the district forward, and I'm proud to be a Merrill Blue Jay. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Brian?
I'm Brian Dasher, Director of Finance for the school district, so I manage the budget and the long-range financial planning, and that's a lot of fun. And basically, we have a total budget of about $39 million, and that's broken down into several different funds. We have our smallest fund, which is the Community Service Fund. That's about $140,000, and that is our middle school aged athletics activities program for that age group of the community. The next largest fund would be the Food Service Fund. That's $1.3 million. And that fund is our food service program is is a minority in the state in that it is fully funded. The general fund, the operating fund of the district does not have to subsidize it. In a lot of districts across the state, generally the operating fund has to subsidize the food service fund. We actually operate in the black with that. Then the next fund up from that is our debt service fund. That's our principal and interest payments. And that's about $1.8 million. And then that's going to drop down next year to $315,000. We have a final payment of $1.5 million on our debt that was taken out on the Kate Goodrich building 27 years ago. And that gets paid off this year. And then there's the Special Education Fund, which funds all special education activities. That's partially federally funded, and the majority of that is local funds, and that's about $5 million. And then our general operating fund is about $31 million on top of that. And that's where the majority of our operating expenses come out of: transportation, technology, administration, and so on. About 70% of our operating budget, the operating budget is the general fund and the special education fund. About 70% of that is salary and benefits for teachers and staff. So we're a very we're a service-oriented enterprise, and so we're very our primary expense is going to be people in the form of staff. As John mentioned earlier, we're in a tight spot right now with the state budget, waiting on them to come up with some kind of a proposal. Depending on where that comes out, right now under current law, if the state budget is never passed, which it looks like it could, at the rate they're going, we would be facing a deficit next year of about $2.5 million. Under the revenue that the governor proposed, his additional state aid would drop that to about $1.5 million for next year. Be about almost $600,000 in additional aid this year, and almost another $500 to $600 next year. We are actually deficit spending this year. What we've been trying to do is kind of hold off through this 17-18 school year to kind of see where the community would land in terms of support for a referendum next year. And we're eyeing, right now, we're in the planning stages of a potential April referendum, which would be what's called an operating referendum. Basically, it would be a referendum to exceed the revenue limit for the 2018-19 school year, and then probably for the next 3 to 4 years. It would be what's called a non-recurring. So it would only be for a limited period of time, and then we'd have to go back out in order to maintain that. And the reason we've been kind of limping along, and we've been spending down some of our reserves in order to avoid having to cut into educational programs. When we reduce staff, we are reducing educational programs because our programs are run by our staff. In order to, what we've been trying to do is wait for this debt to fall off of the levy. What that allows us to do then is present a referendum to the community that would not cause a year-over-year increase in property taxes. So by holding out, basically what would happen is if a referendum doesn't get put on the ballot for April, and we decide that the community would support one or it gets voted down, what would happen is the levy would go down. And there'd be there'd be that $1.5 million drop in the levy. What we're looking at doing is asking the voters to move that $1.5 million from the debt service fund into the operating fund, maintain a level levy from one year to the next, and allow us to avoid having to make further cuts into our educational programming and potentially enhance that programming. Some enhancements that we are looking at putting out there would be primarily to our tech ed program, our industrial arts. We'd like to, we're exploring the possibility of implementing what's called a Fab Lab at the high school, a fabrication laboratory. Basically, that's a kind of think of it as a machine shop type thing, enhancing the tech ed programs, the industrial arts, the woods, auto mechanics and things like that. We'd also be looking at potentially, if a referendum is supported, we'd be looking at potentially adding back some services that we've cut over the years, particularly in the counselors, school psychologists, and social services. The district used to have social workers years ago, and due to budget constraints, we've had to reduce those. And so a referendum might give us the opportunity to deal with that as well. And then a potential referendum could also give us the ability to enhance our capital maintenance. Right now, our capital maintenance is woefully underfunded for the size of a district that we are. We've been doing, and Dale and his crew, and over the years, they've been doing a really good job of keeping up. We're getting to kind of a critical mass of projects that are going to need to be done over the next 5 to 10 years. And our current ability to fund those projects is falling behind. It's very difficult when you're faced with budget reductions of $1.5 million to $2 million per year. It's really difficult to cut a teacher, cut a program, or cut a sport, and then at the same time turn around and replace $300,000 worth of roofs. Nobody comes out to a school board meeting and advocates for the roof. They come out and they advocate for the band program and the foreign language program, and which they should. And so the last few years has been a challenge for public schools. The competition for resources within a district is getting tighter, and it is becoming more and more difficult to adequately fund all of the different things that we are supposed to be doing as a public school. And all the things that keep getting added on to our plates. With each passing budget biennium, there's new mandates to teach this or that, add FIAD, add gun safety, add civics tests, and things like that. And all of that takes staff, it takes time out of the curriculum, it requires space, and it requires money. And so what you'll see over the next couple months, right now we're in the process of putting together a pre-referendum survey, which will be going out in about early October. And all it will be is a survey to gauge the community's level of support for a potential referendum. And it will have on there the opportunity for the community to provide input on the different kinds of things that we're looking at implementing should a referendum pass. And then it will give the community an opportunity to say we would support this much for this amount of taxes and so on and so forth. And the results of that survey is going to really going to determine whether or not we put a referendum question on the ballot in April. If that survey comes back and it's clear that there is no support for a referendum, then we would not move forward with a question on the ballot in April. We would be looking at closing a deficit of about $1.5 million to potentially $2 million for the 18-19 school year. And that would result in some significant programming cuts for the 18-19 school year. And part of the work that we're going to be doing over the next couple months is to also identify what that's going to look like. And so we've been kind of, I hate to say this, because it kind of sounds bad, but we have really been kind of kicking the can down the road for as long as we can to get to this point. This is there's never really a good time to go and ask the community to raise taxes. The best time to do it, though, is when you've got debt coming off the levy already, and a new referendum is not going to have a year-over-year impact on a person's property taxes. And so this is really our one shot. If we don't get it done this time, any referendum past this date would then result in a year-over-year increase in taxes. So that's kind of the big thing in my world right now that we're looking at and planning for the next several months.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate that. What I'd like to do, what a great view of the whole district here. What I'd like to do now is take a 10-minute break, and during that time, if you haven't put a question on an index card, please do that, or maybe a couple of questions. And we'll take a little break to just absorb all that information. We'll come back, I'm going to collect your index cards, and then we'll ask the panel the various questions that you have, but also other questions that you may think of as they are responding to the questions. So let's take a 10-minute break, give everybody a chance to get some water and some cookies, and then we'll come back. And we have a lot of diverse questions here to ask the panel. So I'm just going to start out with one here. This says for Cindy.
Oh. That was easy.
Any staff teacher positions that are open, tech education, Tomahawk has the business education teacher unfilled, so I had to shuffle classes. How are you going to overcome this opening? In other words, I guess it's the tech ed position
Right.
that is not yet.
Right,
filled.
right. We're at the edge, hopefully, of filling it. We've had some interviews and we're in the process of doing reference checks. And that probably would be something that we would work with. I would obviously work with Mr. Murray, the building principal, to look at if there's some way we can shuffle classes. One of the challenges in education, like if you're in the private sector, you can kind of move people maybe from department to department or job to job and say, okay, we're going to train you in this job because you're going to take over now. But in education, you can't do that because the state requires all teachers to be licensed in the areas that they teach. So we can't just pluck somebody from, the English department and say, well, we're going to put you in tech ed this year because we have a spot there for you. So that creates the challenge. So we would look at, the DPI is opening the door now for some different pathways to licensure for teaching, and tech ed is one of those areas. And so there are ways now that people that have kind of lived in the private sector, done jobs that pertain to what we're teaching in the tech ed classes, can obtain a license through the DPI. And there's certain steps that they have to go through to do that, but it's not going back to school for 4 years and obtaining a bachelor's degree in education. So that's one of the pathways we would look at. We would look at, the class sizes, the classes that we're offering. Do we need to shift the classes around? Maybe we might have to unfortunately drop some classes that year. I don't know, Shannon, has there been anything different in the past have you ever not found a tech ed teacher in the past?
No, this is kind of new territory for us.
Yeah.
But I'm confident that we'll have somebody in place in
Yeah.
fall, so I don't think we'll be, that's maybe optimistic, but we did interview 2 candidates.
Right.
And so I think we'll be okay for fall.
Yeah.
And also, I do want to point out that it's different this way too. When I was an administrator in Neenah, 98 to 2002, we would have 150 applicants for a core position. No one wanted to be on the interview team because it would take you forever just to screen all the applications. Now you have positions in 2017, such as the tech ed, where there are few, if any. Mr. Murray went out of his way and using the system that we use for hiring staff, instead of waiting for people to apply, he sought out, because you can do some searches to see who has even sought for employment in technology education in our CESA 9 region, and made some personal calls and invites to people that had perused the internet looking. So, it's come to that, and hopefully that'll pay off and we'll get a solid staff member.
We also go to, every year down in Madison, there's the Wisconsin Education Recruitment Fair. And so our school district attends that. We set up a booth. We talk to prospective candidates there. And then if we have openings that we're having trouble filling in the year, we'll go back to that pool of people we talked to see if they have in fact applied for our position. If not, we'd reach out to them and say, hey, you know, we've got an English vacancy or whatever they're certified in. Have you considered applying for our district? And down there, part of our job there is to promote our district and to let them know about all the good things we have going on here in the district, as well as the, you know, some of the benefits that they're looking for. We have a great mentor program here in the district, and that's what our brand new teachers, educators out of college are looking for, because they need a little help and a little guidance that first couple of years. And so our mentor program is done very, very well. So that's a really strong appeal to those brand new teachers out of college too.
And lastly, we do use the universities. You know, we want student teachers in Merrill because that helps develop internal candidates. And we call universities too in that particular area as well about candidates coming out who we may know from the area and do the word of mouth as well. So it's quite a different world for us.
It is a different world, and as a rural district too, I'm wondering, you mentioned a lot of teacher turnover, and are there some factors there? I mean, is it related to salary? Is it related to location? Is it related, what are some of the factors that are impacting the fact that we just don't have the teacher pool that we've had in the past?
Well, the competitive part of it is the free agency that we've kind of created. It's somewhat like the NFL. I won't name the district south of here that has a tree as a mascot, but they will cold call teachers that they are aware of that are strong teachers. And as much as I said I would never ever do that, you know, never say never is the old adage. But what we found too, which is pleasing, although a bit frustrating while they're gone, is the grass always seems greener on the other side, and we've got 3, 4, 5 teachers that have experienced life down south, and then they've come back because the grass wasn't greener. And so what we're trying to do, with the exception of some of those that UW Stout is just not graduating the tech ed teachers that the state requires, and so that is a true shortage. But what we try to do is we take care of our own and we try to attract others. We do that through recognition, creating a positive culture and climate. We're not trying to make teaching a kumbaya moment. It's very difficult. But when you have the support of those around you and of your building administrators and your central office administrators, it makes it much more bearable and worthwhile. So if we can change the culture and the climate and make that extremely positive, that certainly is a step in the right direction. It was 6 years ago that we went the entire year with not one school psychologist, and we had that position open the whole year. So while as you know, the school psychologist, their professional organization recommends one psychologist per 1,000 students. Well, we had almost 3,000 students at that time, and to go through with just Jill Mertens and Kathy McCoy was extremely difficult on them. And then the next year we had 3 candidates that we got to choose from. So it ebbs and flows, but tech ed and speech and language is another area of concern for us, as well as school psychologists.
So it's an ongoing issue, but you're obviously being more aggressive in pursuing the personnel. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. I have one for Karen here. Thank you for the update on trauma awareness, including ACES training for teachers and increasing and diversifying counseling services available for students. Can you tell me how trauma awareness, specifically suicide self-harm prevention, is being implemented into classrooms and assemblies? So how are students being informed apart from their voluntary participation, like seeking out a counselor?
Within the school system, there are various ways. Part of the responsibility of any teacher is to be sensitive to their students that are in their classroom and to look for any identifiers, to look for anything that is standing out. Part of that too is working with students and educating students so that students talk, because really most of the information of students who are having issues do not come from that student themselves to an adult, but comes from talking maybe with one of their peers. and having that climate and culture where a student feels comfortable coming and reporting to another trusted adult. Building relationships within the buildings where it is not just your teacher, but having the entire environment where there are buildings where your custodian is very involved with students. It might be your food service worker, it might be your school counselor, but it's really being open and honest and talking about those topics. Now, excuse me, on the other side of the coin, you have to be very careful to not sensationalize and glorify mental health issues and concerns. Some of you may be aware of the series that was on Netflix last year. 13, what was it, 13 Reasons. Thank you. And that really did open up dialogue, and if you really watch the entire series, it was more of an educational piece, not necessarily the path of the actual suicide and that type of thing. So I would answer that by, one, identifying, by two, having that climate of trust and really working with all staff members. It's not a situation where you're going to have an assembly to necessarily talk about suicide, because again, that gives that avenue to glorify. But to identify the mental health, starting by having those services, by the school-based mental health services, by educating the staff on really what to look for. And that was what we did as a staff throughout last year. So I don't point to any one thing, because it's not one thing, it's a collective way of how we work with students.
Karen, here's a related question. Does the mandate from the state to change from a traditional model of counseling to a model that focuses on the individual from elementary through high school necessitate more counselors?
I'm thinking that that's in reference to the ACP, where we're working with students so that all students are college and career ready. No, does it take more counselors? It does not, because the ACP is not something that is delivered strictly by school counselors. It's delivered by all staff. So it's looking at, for example, let's say we have a math class. What are we teaching our math class that's going to be applicable to college and career ready? It's really identifying what everyone does within the building. So no, it does not involve more staff.
All right. And I just want to remind you, if a question comes up in your mind as we're discussing these questions, please ask a question and we'll try to field them. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.
Many employers want enthusiastic, mature trades employees with soft skills. What are you planning to implement to get students ready for tech college and change the culture of it's a university or your second class? So I guess this could be for a variety of our panelists. Soft skills and then emphasis on trade, and not so much saying, well, if you go to a trade school, that's second class to a liberal arts education.
Well, I guess I would like to take that one first if I could try. And the reason is not because of my education, it's my lack thereof. Because my father just passed away this summer at the age of 91, and my father never went to college. My father, he was a mechanic, an auto mechanic. He was a body man, and he worked with his hands. And he was brilliant because he could create anything with his hands. The trailer in my yard, the cargo bin for our van, it was amazing. He could make tools that I couldn't even fathom. He made a tool one time where you could hang onto the handle, step on the foot, and hammer the end to take 2x2 tiles out of the home, my first home that we were trying to remodel, because I couldn't get them out. So I have a respect for that line of work. You see, the thing with my dad is he did what he wanted to do and he loved to do. He came home from work and he went to work. And for me personally, I feel like we haven't done as well as we could, and I'm pleased to hear the question. I don't feel that we have done it as well as we could as a district, not just here, but other districts too, and maybe even with regulations that we've had, about what every kid should be doing. Not every child's gonna go to college, and that's okay. And I think that's part of, my interest, I think, with the business survey. It's kind of come around full circle for me, even having 4 children, one who's graduated from college and is going to continue, but trying to find a job with a history degree only, there's probably not a lot of positions. And I look at it and I think to myself, is there more that he could be doing? And I think it's our responsibility and maybe our moral obligation, not just as a school, but as a family too, and a community, to make sure everyone finds their little niche in society. Businesses need to know we need to know what skills they need to have in their businesses and what they're looking for, and they need to be a part of our school as well. We have an opportunity starting October 1st with businesses with an Inspire program. Well, they will have access to students. There's a whole new world out there where right now it used to be with kids in academic and career planning, there would be this wonderful program that we've used for years that a child can do their career interest survey, get their top 10 list, and figure out what training they would need and maybe what college or tech school they would need to go to. But the business was not a component that was a part of that program. And starting October 1st, the businesses are a part of that, where someone can say, this is what I'm interested in, and now businesses in the community will pop up on their screen that do the type of stuff that the child may be interested in. Hallelujah. And there'll be a vehicle for the business world and the student world to communicate. And with the help of some adults in the building, we're going to coordinate some of the tours. And Merrill High School is open for business. We said it on the radio, and we'll say it again here. We have a lot of opportunities for people to come in as companies and say, this is what we're looking for and what we do in our business. There's time built in now in the Merrill High School schedule. And so we would openly invite them to call Mr. Murray at the high school. And parents have a role too. Parents have a role and responsibility to work with the schools, work with the counselors and their children, and ask them what are their plans after high school, and be part of that academic and career plan when they do meet with their J-Talks.
Is the Fab Lab, could that be an argument for the school district emphasizing a little bit more in terms of mechanical, hands-on sorts of learning versus going to a four-year college, for example? And is that a motivation or a part of the motivation for something like that?
Well, and I think it's two-sided. We got away from some of the trades. That was one of the greatest interests of mine as a high school student. My favorite class ever was building trades, and where we would go off and work for teachers were primarily our customers, whether we're putting on a roof or enclosing a garage. And then the other class was upholstery. Those classes are nowhere to be found now. Why, I don't know. We don't have computers that are necessarily able to make a beanbag chair, if anybody wanted a beanbag chair. I guess I just dated myself there. But, those were great things. And so we want students to be able to do those things as potential homeowners, but we also want students to be able to do those things in case that's what they want to make money at, and that's what they want to establish a career in. So it certainly is, and a Fab Lab is more than just having, cool computers and machines and all of that in there. It's more of a mindset of critical thinking and problem solving that's really getting the creative juices flowing. What can I create? What can I create that's going to solve this problem? And so that's really what all of our students need to be able to do, whether they're college bound or going into the world of work right away.
And I like what Dr. Sample just said too, because when you're looking at students, everyone focuses on what career. Everybody, regardless of what job you're in, you solve a problem. And I think that's really should be the focal point of what you do. When we're working with kids, what kind of problems, what do you like to do, and what kind of problems do you want to work on when you're older?
The Fab Lab technology education area is really a great segue into building trades or some type of manufacturing outlet. We have businesses in town that have a great tradition, like I spoke of before, of giving scholarships to students to go on to college. And those same businesses now are saying, we're kind of paying our kids to leave town because they're getting careers that aren't in Merrill. We have a lot of great manufacturing in Merrill, a lot of great businesses in Merrill. And they're reaching out to us and say, can we start to educate the students so that they can stay and live and work here in Merrill in our businesses? There's a Weinbrenner, when our leadership team visited Weinbrenner, they're facing a workforce shortage in the next 5-10 years because of people who are coming of retirement age. So who's going to make the shoes? And that's really what it's coming down to. It's, the workforce is depleting on us. We've trained our kids and our students to, you gotta go to college, you gotta go to college, you gotta go to college. Like Gerald said, there's not a lot of jobs anymore in some of those areas. We've dropped off the building trades. I was a sheet metal apprentice. I went through a sheet metal apprenticeship program. The building trades afforded me a wonderful 30-year career, and I gained a wealth of knowledge from that. And also, that same career prepared me to work in education. It really did. So it's not really the avenue you take; it's the road you turn.
Thank you, Jim. So I have a little bit more general question, general education type question, but it could speak to special ed too. How have the needs of students changed over the past 10 to 20 years, and how has this impacted public education in Merrill? Kind of a general question.
I'll take a stab at that. I prefaced it by saying this is my 37th year, so I have definitely seen the change. And I'd say it boils down to one thing, and that's the social emotional needs of students. Students' needs that are not met at home come into the school, and that becomes an issue and concern for everyone. When students would come to school, not that far back, we knew a student was fed, we knew a student had clothing on their body, and we knew that they probably had 2 parents at home and possibly even a stay-home parent. Society's changed. We can all agree on that. Excuse me. And so have the needs of our students. We spend our time not only teaching the academics, but meeting those social emotional needs. And that goes back to the prior question, as far as how are you working with students. And that's where we're now educating the whole student. We know that the student that comes in and hasn't had breakfast is not going to excel in the classroom. We have our breakfast program at school. We have one of the highest rates for free and reduced meals, but it's very important to get that information out to parents to say, hey, fill this out to see if you qualify. But it has changed because the schools have now really become the provider for those social and emotional challenges that we see. And it's our responsibility as well as the community, as well as the parents, as well as the organization to meet the needs of these students.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Some more specific sorts of questions. This one probably for Dale, but can we put solar panels on the schools?
We actually have solar panels on high school. Wisconsin Public Service had a program, I think about 10 or 12 years ago, where they put a small set of panels up on the roof of the high school so that they could do some educational programs through that. And they're right now reaching out towards doing that again, providing some grants or some funding for that. So we're looking into some opportunities for that and the way that we can put that into our curriculum. Solar panels for electric panels are a little more pricey at this time. The payback isn't all there. So it might take 30 years to pay the cost of putting them in, but they are coming back. And there are things that we look at. We look at ways we can save energy and reduce our consumption.
Thank you. Here's one. How can we give kids more time outside?
About opening your door at home, I guess.
Yeah, they didn't specify where the time was going to occur.
Well, I think in elementary there are, the buildings themselves determine the recess part of it. But I think the question is probably getting at, maybe some environmental science is what I'm thinking, without prodding anymore. And I know when I was at the middle school, we have some staff members who are very active in getting kids outside. I'm thinking of Lynn Kurth right now, who has had the opportunity to even work with students on ships in Lake Michigan with grant projects. They've worked on the invasive species right along the Prairie River between the library to 3rd Street. They put a little prairie garden right in the front of the building. You know, they're very active with projects outside, and we just added a second school forest out of Maple Grove Elementary School, and our school forest is second to none. You know, we'll be reporting back to the board on the school forest in a couple months, but the number of days that it's not used is maybe 10 days all year. There's always something happening at the forest. It's our community. It's part of who we are, and I think that. And I remember when I was at the middle school, there was a question, or someone was a little whining, I guess, about school forest and schedule, and I said we're going to be, as long as I'm principal here, we're going to be going to the school forest, and I'd say that even as director of instruction, we're all going to be going to the school forest, and we're going to hope to continue with all the overnights with 5th grade as well. So, look forward to it. Kids love it. In fact, Mr. Nolan even added an outdoor adventure this summer with a summer school program.
You had 2 camps out there and a toughness clinic or something, a strong, or a tough training competition or something.
I think that the staff probably like the break from the classroom.
They do.
This one, help me with this one, whoever made this question, and I don't know if we can exactly answer it here because it relates to, I think, Laura Krause. But how can we get more farm-to-table food in the schools? And I'm not sure, would anybody be willing to raise their hand? Who asked that question? Kyle. Can you explain that a little bit more, what your thought would be as far as that?
I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory, but just more local farmers providing food for the school system somehow.
Okay.
Sorry, are you asking them how they promote that, or how they, I mean, what do they do? I guess maybe that's what it is, you know. What does the school district do to promote the idea that they want that farm to table? You know, do they advertise that they're looking for farmers? Do they seek them out?
Yeah, they actually, our food service director does quite a bit of that already. She's been trying to increase that with each passing year, the amount of vegetables and fruit that we're getting from local farmers. And so that's something that's kind of an ongoing project of hers each year, trying to expand that. I'd have to kind of follow up with her on that and find the specifics of just how much and you know, what products. Some of it is difficult in terms of you know, the season. But I know when things are in season and when we've got school in the fall, I know she does some things with strawberries and other things. Yeah, I'd have to follow up on the specifics, but I know that there is a push to do that. Our food service management company, Taher, does try, it has helped a lot over the last few years in terms of getting that off the ground. I know probably 5 years ago we weren't doing any of it, and it's been kind of a...
And I'm interested in this too, because 5 years ago, someone had a surplus of potatoes and was turned down, and they were going to donate to the school. And they were turned down. Now,
You know,
that's
it's
ancient, you know.
food service is an interesting topic these days. With the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, it's become much more difficult in terms of the types of foods. The reason the potatoes were probably turned down is they're too starchy and there was too many of them. And we couldn't serve them fast enough to use them. The Act, the USD regulations actually mandate the types of vegetables and the color of the vegetables that we have to have We have to have, within a week, we have to have so many servings of green vegetables, so many servings of yellow vegetables. And so it becomes very difficult to actually serve, one, vegetables that kids like and will actually eat, and two, find vegetables that are in season, that are the right kinds of vegetables that we have to have these days. I could go on and on about how restrictive these guidelines have become and how difficult it has become to actually serve these types of things. You can't have too much fruit because there's too much sugar. You can't serve. We even have to count the number of pickles that we serve. If you have hamburgers one day and you've served too much salty food for the week, you can't serve pickles with the hamburger. It's gotten kind of that nitty-gritty in terms of what we can and can't do with the federal lunch program.
I will say it's gotten a little bit better, though. There's a stranglehold on all of the regulations, but I remember being out of Maple Grove, and the kids out there during lunchtime were saying, I don't know what this jicama is, but I don't like it. And so, but then a year later, they were serving jicama, and it's amazing what a little bit of fat-free ranch dressing will do for that. And we were throwing away just tons of it, and because they have to take it. That's another regulation. You have to take it. You can't choose what you're going to eat. You have to take this. And so it has gotten better. I think I think because of our topper chef who comes out and he's out in the district at least a dozen times educating the students. He works with our culinary arts program at the high school, and they're wonderful to work with. And like Brian said earlier, we're in the black every year, and our kids, for the most part, are eating very healthy, very tasty food.
Dr. Sample, my apologies, but what is jicama?
It's a vegetable, it just tastes horrible.
It's a white root vegetable.
A white root vegetable,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
It grows underground, and a little bit of ranch and
We
it's
never
all
had
right.
that in my day, but.
Yeah.
So here's kind of a general education question. How much homework do kids typically have in the week? And are you working towards decreasing that amount and allow kids to enjoy their free time outside of school?
The general rule of thumb is based on the child's age with the minutes, and but I would say that over the years there is less homework now than what there used to be. When I was the principal at the middle school, back in St. Wolf here again, right? We had plenty of discussions about homework being a compliance. Homework is for learning. It wasn't really of learning. So in other words, it was formative, not summative. So in other words, it shouldn't really be part of the academic grade. And my story on this is when I was a teacher, there were many times where I would have students who could ace the tests and quizzes that I would give them. They would drive me nuts because they wouldn't do their homework. And I would punish them by lowering their grade based on how grades were determined. On the other hand, I had kids who tried hard each and every day. They always did their homework, but they still didn't know it. So at the middle school, we separated the homework from the academic grade. So the students then would get an academic grade and then a citizenship grade, and homework was part of that citizenship grade. There's still going to be some homework, and studying is important. However, if you emphasize too much with homework as part of the academic grade, it does create, the fairness comes into play because not every child has two family members at home waiting to ask how your day was at school and to help with the homework. So it imbalances it quite a bit. So I guess that's my answer to that. I would imagine there are always going to be moments where there's going to be homework, but I would argue that the volume has decreased already.
Yes.
with the volume decreasing though, what kind of homework is going out? Because I know of some students whose homework revolves more around projects or doing something like, I don't know, with the Merrill Productions program I help with, filming events is their homework. Are you looking more to do stuff with that for all the other classes, or just stuff to get them involved in what they're trying to learn?
Yeah, I love the project-based idea where you can apply it. And I want to go back to math. You know, I'm an elementary education cert and a math person, and taught pre-algebra, algebra, geography, social studies, exploring lit, and reading. In math, I know repetition's important. How many times do you have to show the same skill in a two-step equation? You know, is 5 times enough, or do I have to do 2 through 50 the evens? So that's part of that philosophical discussion that takes time, and it takes time to get consistency within departments, whether it be middle school, high school, or elementary grade level, and what that looks like. But that is the direction I would say we would go, would be with more project-based type of work. You can make, well, I could go on, and we'll end it there.
All right. Another question now for you, Joe. Will MAPS continue to teach cursive writing, and if so, at what level?
Cursive is an art class, and it's an elective. It's called calligraphy. I know that may not be politically correct for some, but that's really where we're at. We have so many expectations right now with students of what they need to know and be able to do at every grade level. It would blow your mind. Hundreds and hundreds of standards. I would argue that the keyboarding, the kids write more today than they ever have. It may not be with a pen in a cursive format, but it would be keyboarding or creating something now with their new technology. So I know that being able to read someone's signature or write your name in cursive for some is a very important skill, and we used to, all of us, get maybe a penmanship grade back when we were in school. Times change, technologies change, and that's okay.
If you can't read cursive, how do you read old documents? Historical documents?
Well,
get an interpreter?
That would be one way. I just keep thinking of the technology we have right now, even regardless of whether it's cursive or not. There are methods right now on the iPad, which I don't think we're using enough. As an example, you can take a document right now, and if you have a hard time reading, you have a way to have it read to you. You can speed it up, slow it down, you can highlight, you can analyze more. I mentioned my son, who's going to be an archivist. That's his long-term plan. He'll be working with documents such as that. So I respect that question, and I don't know how to, maybe we need a little help more on that one. That's how I would respond right now. Pardon?
I think you need a lot of help on that one.
I disagree, and that's okay.
No, I'll jump in, because I'm a history buff. I read a lot of history. I know from my personal experience, the history books that I've read several. I'm probably more well-read in history than the average person. The historical documents that I read are in print. I don't go out and read the Federalist Papers in the original handwriting of the founders. I'm reading them in modern day Helvetica or whatever type font it's in. The books I usually read will have pictures of the original documents, and I even find it difficult for me to read the writings of the founders. You read the original picture of the Declaration of Independence, I think is, I can read it, but it's difficult. I think it's more important to be able to read the Declaration of Independence and understand it in a Times New Roman font than it would be to read and understand it in cursive. And I think the majority of history textbooks, the majority of history books, all reprint those documents. And I don't think reading a historical document is a skill that the average person needs. The average person needs the critical thinking skills to understand what the Federalist Papers are talking about, what the Constitution was talking about, what the Declaration of Independence was talking about. And I think there's, I've read the Declaration, I've read several of the Federalist Papers, I've read the Constitution, and I've read it all in modern font. And I think I'm pretty well informed on what our civics is all about and how our government should run. I don't read it in the original cursive of the founders.
And it seems like, too, that it's almost like it's become another language in a sense of that you have to do research, and if you want to go to the original writing, you're going to have to learn about perhaps reading cursive more. And
I think a historian is going to need to understand and be able to read that kind of stuff. Just as I'm a big World War II buff. So when I read about the Holocaust, I can't read the original documents because I don't even speak German. I have to have it translated for me. And so I think it's just another, society is changing. I don't write in cursive anymore. The only time I ever write in cursive is for my signature. And I do that once. I've got it saved in my computer, and now I digitally sign my PDFs. And so the only time I ever write out my signature is when I'm swiping my credit card and they make me do it on the, if my purchase is $25 or more.
Okay, I have one more question actually from the audience, and it is for Brian. But before I ask that question, there were a couple of kudos here. Kudos to Scott Arneson for offering extracurricular exercise class for MAPS workers and their friends. Great community service, thanks. And then kudos to Chris Krug and her staff at the RMS pool for all the open and family swim times. Great community service, thanks, David, I'm sorry. So those were two kudos for you. And then finally, Brian, here's a question. What can the city do to support passage of a referendum?
I think any activities like tonight certainly help give us that soapbox, so to speak, for us to get out and get the word out. I think if there's any other forums that are out there that we can speak at, that we could have an opportunity to address the community. I think we have committees. We have a long-range financial planning committee that meets. That's going to be meeting over the course of the next few months as we plan this out. I think any support that they could give us there, come out to those. As we get into it, if once we collate the results of our survey, and we do decide to move forward, we're going to be looking at a fairly intensive informational campaign starting probably after Christmas. And we're going to be looking at opportunities to go out and speak at forums such as these, speak at Kiwanis clubs, Lions clubs, Rotary, things like that. So I think it's just opportunities for forums like this are great.
I have a question with regard to the pre-survey in October.
Mm-hmm.
How do we gain access as citizens to that? Can we fill it out?
Yeah, so what will happen is it'll come out by mail. It'll be mailed to every resident household in the district. And there'll be two ways you can complete the survey. The survey will have a code where you can go online and take it online, or you can fill it out and mail it in. And so that survey we'll be making an effort to get it out to every household within the district boundaries.
Will the citizens be educated as to what the pros and cons are to the referendum? I mean,
So, yeah, eventually they will. So the survey is the first step, and it's really just an information gathering kind of a tool to kind of gauge the initial support out there. And if it comes back showing that there's strong support, strong interest in a levy or a referendum, then what we would do is we would take that and finalize an actual referendum plan and what that is actually going to look like. And then there will be a formal communication effort to explain what that's going to be and just exactly what the impact's going to be and what specifically we're going to be asking for as part of that operation referendum. So right now, a lot of that's going to be spelled out in the survey. The survey is kind of it's got several different possibilities that we're going to be looking at. We've talked about there'll be questions in each of in several different main areas. There's going to be some questions regarding the social services and curricular area for enhancements. That's talking about what I mentioned earlier in regards to the social workers, school counselors. Then there's the tech ed portion, the enhancements to the tech ed program, the implementation of a fab lab, what's called maker spaces in the middle school and elementary. And then that would also entail the addition of another position within the tech ed department to basically staff the fab lab. Then we're looking at facilities, and there'll be several different things that we'll propose that we could do with some additional money. And the community will have an opportunity to prioritize those different things. We'd like to see this, we wouldn't like to see that, we'd like to see more of this. And so then we'll collate all that information, we'll take it and then put it together in one particular plan, and then that will get communicated out to the community then. And the pros and cons, what would happen if it passes and what will happen if it doesn't pass.
Okay, so that's going to be important.
And one of the biggest one is that we heard from the community conversation was the retention and attraction of quality staff, teachers and administrators. So, you know, if we're, right now our starting teacher pay is $36,000, that's way under, and that kind of goes back to that question too, what does it take to get people here? You know, thank you doesn't feed the dog, and neither does culture and climate. There has to be some type of compensation, but it's trying to keep up with those around us. Our per pupil expenditures are much lower than the areas, especially south of us, and our starting pay for teachers is considerably lower too. So that's one of the things that's going to be on the question. We're not going to assume anything from the community members and the taxpayers. We're going to ask them, is this something that you value? And if not, then that will not be on there.
Right. Okay. Are there any questions of the panelists that you might have? Any other thoughts or questions?
John, on hiring teachers, when you say a new teacher, if you're hiring somebody in here for an opening and they have prior experience somewhere else, are you starting them at the beginning rate, or are you starting them based
No.
upon experience and education?
Based upon experience and education, correct, yes. Yeah. So a brand new teacher fresh out of college is $36,000 compared to 42 to sometimes 45, 46, depending on what you teach. A tech ed teacher coming out of college can pretty much go anywhere in the state that they want. And that's become a practice, unfortunately, where, call it values as well, but there have been instances between two districts where one teacher will sign the contract and continue to shop around. And then as it gets closer to school, another district would offer them $6,000 more and pay their liquidated damages from signing the contract back at that district. And so it becomes very difficult at that point. I remember it was just a mere 30 years ago, Gerald, that a second round and a third round was not uncommon. I was involved in that, and I was a special education teacher. So times have changed in that respect.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This might be geared towards you, Karen. Sounds like what you're doing to me is a lot about wellness programs for the students, which I think is really awesome and vital. Has the word meditation creeped into education in Merrill at all?
Mindfulness,
Awesome.
yes.
That's
In
great to
fact,
hear.
that was, when we had our round robin for our staff, our last in-service, that was in the calming classroom session.
Yes, that's great.
So is that term accepted by society generally as okay or non-threatening?
Mindfulness?
Yeah.
Yes, it started, it's really creeping in. A lot of the elementary teachers have started doing it as well.
I know mindfulness or meditation kind of has like preconceptions with like Buddhism and some of those things, but I think it's really coming around, and I would really love to see it here in Merrill.
Any other thoughts or, yes?
Are charitable organizations like the Bierman Foundation a possibility to help with the debt?
So the Bierman Foundation actually has basically funded our Jay Stadium donation, and they gave us all $2.7 million for that. And I don't know if there's a, so I think you know, in terms of supporting the debt, the Bierman, that would be outside of what the Bierman Foundation is trying to actually accomplish. They're looking at actually things like the water park and the Jay Stadium and things that actually enhance the community. Paying off debt is not something that they would be interested in doing.
It also creates havoc in the school finance puzzle, the way that schools are funded. So if they would just pay off a bunch of debt, they'd say, well, you didn't need that money last year, now you're not gonna get it next year. You know, so that it puts us, it would set us back more than it would help us. So we use avenues like that to enhance our facilities and our spaces to attract people to our community. Jay Stadium, like I said before, was a wonderful thing. We're gonna do a little bit more out there next year, just to maintain it and keep it up and hopefully attract families to our district and to our community.
All right. Well, thank you so very much for coming. Let's give a hand to the panelists.